Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world today. Welcome to today's Scrum Pulse webinar, the top 10 meanest Scrum anti-patterns with professional Scrum trainer Stefan Wolpers. I'm very happy to have you here today, Stefan. And I am Lindsay Velasina from Scrum.org, and I will be your moderator today. And I'll be working on fielding all your questions for Stefan. So can you progress to the next slide, please? Okay, so it's just some quick guidelines here. As you can see on the control panel within Zoom webinar, there is a Q&A button. Please use that to enter all of your questions into the Q&A stream so that I can ask those questions throughout the Q&A session at the end. This will be recorded, so the recording will be available within 24 hours. Also, your microphone will be muted throughout. However, please use the functions that we have within Zoom to communicate with us. So next slide, please. Oh. Uh-oh. So really quick about Scrum.org. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, in 2009. Our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. We're focused on helping people learn through free online resources and activity-based live training led by our more than 340 professional Scrum trainers around the globe. And we also have our professional Scrum certification tests to allow people to validate their knowledge through our certification. We support people wherever they are in their learning journey and focus on helping people grow. And I hope that today's session will play a good part in this exciting topic that we have. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Stefan.
Thanks, Lucy. Oh my goodness, the touch bar on my MacBook is really working. I tried it for the very first time. So good. My top 10 Scrum anti-patterns, making your Scrum work is challenging. How hard can Scrum be? I mean, the manual has 13 pages, so don't make a fuss about it. I probably have heard something along that line earlier before, and my experience is exactly the reason why we have these little sessions here from time to time to better understand what are we actually supposed to achieve and not just get stuck in the usual process that we have from the past probably. So a bit about me. I've been doing this for quite a long time, so 15 years by now, and I'm based out of Berlin in Germany, and I've been working in the past mainly with fast-growing startups. Fast-growing, I mean that they double or triple the number of people working for them within every 6 or 9 months, and large corporations. And you may have read some stuff from me on Scrum.org blog, or maybe you even subscribe to my newsletter I send out every week. So the next one will be available on Sunday. Maybe you're a member of my Slack community. Nominally, we're 10,000 something members, but de facto we're 200 to 300, which is really cool. I also organize regular meetups. If you like to join that, you're welcome as well. And maybe I will be able to organize another Agile camp here in Berlin. It's a small bar camp that we have, that we like to have here. But now let's actually get moving and take the first one. So my meanest, baddest Scrum anti-patterns after 15 plus years of dealing with Scrum and what it feels like in different organizations in real life. So number 10, the oversized product backlog. You may recall that there are 3 pillars of empiricism, transparency, inspection, adaptation. Without transparency, there cannot be inspection, and without inspection, there can't be any adaptation. So basically, transparency is a very, very good thing. And we like to be transparent about everything. However, as often, you can do too much of a good thing. So there are some people who believe that they need to put each and everything into the product backlog. You know, ideas, fragment of ideas, appeasement policy items, you name it. And over the course of time, the product backlog swells. It gets bigger and bigger and fatter. And the problem at the same time is that it also gets less valuable. Because as a Scrum team, what you want to have is an actionable product backlog. Actionable meaning that A, you should be able to run a decent sprint review at any moment in time. And B, that you should not allocate too much time in creating a backlog with items that you probably will never work on. You know, so having a backlog that is significantly too large. So my world typically means something between 4 to 6 sprints worth of work, probably, will cause, in my experience, several bad outcomes. Let me put it this way. So A, it gets confusing, you know. B, you will push people away from collaborating with you on the product backlog. I mean, who can deal with hundreds of different items? When I was working as a product owner, I basically was able to understand maybe 100 different items at the same time. Beyond that, I really had to start reading about them. Okay, what we're talking about here. So by all means, what you want to have is an actual product backlog. Of course, you need to design a process around this, what feeds into the product backlog. And that is something that you really need to get going in collaboration with the rest of the team. So how do you deal with ideas? How do you do hypothesis testing, etc. pp. Those are all very important issues, but they should not probably be part of your product backlog. So that's, in my experience, not a good idea. Number 9, misaligned incentives. Have you ever been in a situation where the sales folks sold some features without you knowing, just to make quota at the end of the quarter so they can get their bonuses? The problem that we have here is not just that some people outside of the team are actually influencing your product backlog, right? This is bad enough. But on top of that, it is also pointing at a dysfunctional organization. The issue with Scrum is that if you want to be really successful with Scrum, if you want to 3, 4, 5x the value created by your teams, you really need to reconsider how you actually organize your organization. If you keep running the old functional silos with different budgets and different incentive schemes, you probably will not be able to gain a lot from applying Scrum. So becoming 20, 30% more effective, that is not a big thing. But again, being several times, 2, 3, 5x times more effective than before, that is something completely different. And to do that, you need to have a bit more egalitarian structure, you know, and by all means, make sure that incentives of everyone involved in the whole value creation process is aligned. And that there is no incentive for whatever subgroup within this process to actually go rogue. And so, like in our example, I'll solve features that are not yet available without asking you, just to make quota. Number 8, the developer's code fallacy. There's this, at least when we talk about software, there's this crazy idea that developers just write code. And I believe this is complete nonsense. See, what you want to have is an empowered Scrum team that is tasked with solving customer problems, ideally autonomously. So in that sense, we're more like a product team in the Marty Kagan meaning of the word. And to get there, you really need to act as a team. And as a team means that we all need to understand why we do things we do, what this is going to be, and how we will do them. And this, of course, also implies that the developers need to participate in all the processes that belong to that part. So, for example, run customer interviews or help in customer care, try to understand what people that are using our product are running into in daily life, where we can be better by comparison to today. So I always like to say, dear developers, writing code is one integral part of your job that probably you will only allocate 50% of your time to doing that, and all the other time goes into figuring out actually what is worth building. Of course, this has a problem because some people, some developers particularly, just want to solve puzzles. And this is totally legit. You have to deal at the team level with that issue, but be prepared that your developers, of course, shall talk to customers and watch what the customers are doing and become an integral part of the product discovery process. So, in my experience, it's very helpful and very rewarding to actually task or ask your developers whether they would like to participate in that. So developers do much more than just write code. They're integral members of the team. Number 7, product owner by proxy. It's a very simple way to actually sabotage Scrum. I mean, it's some people refer to the product owner as the Achilles heel of Scrum because that individual has so much burden to carry on the one side and so much responsibility on the other side. And if you take away the main responsibility of the product owner, maximize the value of the work of the Scrum team by managing the product backlog, you're pretty effective in sabotaging Scrum into something else. And the easiest way to do that is basically have some kind of steering committee that is running the show for the product owner. Have some sort of stage gate process built into this. Impose some sort of acceptance stages within the creation process, etc. pp. So that it is, in my experience, a very typical issue that we have. The product owner is actually not empowered to make decisions on behalf of the team for the benefit of the client. Number 6, the hardening sprints. This is just synonymous for my quality sucks. If you need hardening sprints, so dedicated period of time that you need to improve the quality of your increment so you can actually deliver to your customers, something fundamentally is wrong. Maybe you haven't paid enough attention to your definition of done. Maybe you've been sticking around with your definition of done for the last 3 years without ever touching it and without ever considering whether it should be improved. But rest assured, the idea of Scrum is that given that we have a definition of done that is defining the quality standard that is necessary to achieve to actually deliver what we build to our customers, you do not need hardening sprints to actually deliver an increment. The moment someone from the team says, this job is done, this item is done, it is ready to go. It doesn't need to be accepted. It doesn't need to be tested. It certainly doesn't have to be hardened to actually be handed over to our customers. We can deliver it without any legal, financial, moral, or other forms of implications attached to it. So whenever something is done, it can be delivered. That is the level of quality that you need to achieve. And that requires, as always, regular attendance. You should consider to go back to a definition of done maybe every 4, 6, 8 weeks and ask yourself a serious question. Are we still up to the job? Is our definition of done still reflecting the quality that we need to actually deliver something to our customers? Okay, number 5, Hippoism. highest paid people's opinion. So I already mentioned that Scrum requires a certain level of egalitarianism, let me put it this way, a more egalitarian approach to getting work organized and done. And I think also that this is another moment where we can say, okay, this certainly is something that's separating successful Scrum teams from teams that are Scrum teams in name only. If your management people are overriding team's decision, if your management people are, how shall I put it, toying with the idea of self-management of the team, if your management people can actually push things into product backlogs or into sprints, you're certainly not practicing Scrum. It might still work for you, but again, if you want to reap the benefits of Scrum, you really need to consider how to do this differently. Just because your CEO is convinced that a certain feature is necessary to make your customers happy, it doesn't mean that you start building it, because there is data, and there's a lot of data that we can have and use to become data informed. If you haven't yet checked the evidence-based management guide, now would probably be a good moment to do so. So just head to the Scrum.org website and search for the EBM guide. And by the way, there's also an open assessment for the EBM guide stuff that is really, really helpful if you want to have an understanding what kind of metrics are available to make your lives easier and become more successful as a team. So number 4, dogmatism. There's this nice one little sentence that is that the Scrum is a purposefully incomplete framework, and this is totally true. The point also is that if we know that it is a framework that basically needs to be augmented by other practices to make it work, being dogmatic about it, it does not really help. So waving the Scrum guide in front of you while analyzing each and everything, whether it's mentioned in the Scrum guide or not, is certainly not a suitable way to go forward. This is not helpful, again. So dogmatism, no matter on which side, is not helpful with regard to being a successful Scrum team. And particularly not if it's regarding the Scrum guide. So if your Scrum Master is pushing you in the direction of it's not written in the Scrum guide, so we don't do it, please reconsider what you're doing. Number 3, no failure culture. The cool thing about Scrum is that you can make progress in a complex environment. So an environment where we are already aware that we know less than that there's out there, that we can step by step, incrementally and iteratively figure out where to go and where to create value for our customers without betting the farm on a hunch. This is the cool thing. So every sprint is a new opportunity to run new experiments, try something out, close the feedback loop, get feedback from our customers, building something, see whether our hypothesis has been proven right. And of course, there will be the moment that we will fail, and we will probably fail quite often. That is not the issue. The problem is if there is no such thing as a failure culture within your organization. So if it's, for example, like one of my large clients from the past, where it was not advisable to have a failed project on your resume if you want to make a career within your organization, which automatically resulted in some sort of behavior that you would probably consider to be more more prevalent in a public administration than in a corporation. So people playing safe, people making only safe bets to make sure that nothing is going wrong, and which also means that you probably leave a lot of the money on the table that is out there. So if you want to run Scrum successfully, you need to have a failure-tolerant culture, a failure-tolerant organization. It is part of the game. It's how we learn. Just remember how kids are learning. So there's no difference from that approach to getting new knowledge, acquiring new knowledge, becoming more experienced than that we do in a complex environment when we're working as a member of a Scrum team, figuring out what is worth building for our customers to make their lives easier. So I'm a big fan of what's a failure of the month. Why not celebrate a failure? I'm also a big fan of people from the management actually telling them what kind of problems they have met. And so you may have heard that the Amazon Kindle phone, the Amazon phone that was in the planning, Jeff Bezos' phone that failed miserably. But he was smart enough to say, okay, yeah, it was a failure, but believe me, when moving forward, we will make a lot more and more costly failures than this one. This is just life, how life works. And if you have this idea failure is not an option, you will breed a specific culture, and that culture will slow down progress and innovation, and will also impede creativity. And all of that is not a good environment to actually become a really, really successful Scrum team. So if you want to become good at this, embrace the idea that you need to have a failure culture, that failure needs to be acceptable within your organization. Number 2, Taylorism and micromanagement. I find it amazing to see that so many organizations are still structured like General Motors in the 1920s, based on the ideas of a guy who created something in the late 1890s. By the way, Frederick Winslow Taylor was also the reason that Harvard has a business school, so don't forget that, and on that. But coming back to Taylorism and micromanagement, the main idea that there is a management cast that thinks and makes decisions, has a vision, and creates strategies, and builds all the processes, and then there's this worker class that is just doing what it's been told to do. And if they're not functioning well, they will be replaced because there are endless numbers of other worker bees waiting outside the factory gate to get a job in the organization. This is most definitely not true anymore. I mean, if you figure out that machine learning and big data is a crucial capability to make your customers happy in the future, go try and find engineers that are really good at this, and you will know rather quickly that they're not queuing outside your factory gate, because you're competing with a lot of other companies, Google, Facebook, and Amazon being some of those. So this is not working. Also, micromanagement is not working, of course, in a complex environment. Because we simply do not know all the time where to go and what to do next. And the idea that someone tells you what to do, how and when is really not helpful to get things going. So if you really want to embrace business agility, if you want to become a learning organization, that learns faster than the competition and then is able to actually capitalize on these on this knowledge by creating products and services that are delivered to the customers, you really need to reconsider how your company is structured. So it doesn't mean that you have to be a complete holacracy, Zappa style, within the next 5 years. But you certainly have to think about that the classic structure that you've been using for maybe decades is probably not the appropriate way of dealing with things nowadays. So again, it's a question of whether you want to be 20%, 30% more successful, or whether you want to 2x, 3x, or 4x the value creation of your Scrum teams. So, and my number one, no product vision, no product goal. It's really Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. I think the big advantage of Scrum is that the Scrum team can act as a team. You know, it's about match points, about the big things, accomplishing the really complicated things, making a big leap forward. This is what Scrum is really, really good at. However, Scrum is not that good at, you know, keeping the flow going. You know, it's just toiling on an endless influx of new job items, work items. You know, so that very often comprises the work that we are facing in large organizations at the moment. Staying in business, making more money, more revenue, creating more shareholder value, that is all not a vision from my perspective. So product vision really is, okay, what do we think that we can achieve in the future that would really make an impact on society, on our customers' lives, on our planet probably, and derived from the product vision, no product goals. Getting from the more abstract level to the more concrete level, and then feeding into sprint goals. So whenever I talk with teams who struggle to come up with sprint goals, it quickly shows that they basically do not understand why they do the things they do and where they are supposed to be heading for the next month. And this is mostly due to a lack of a vision. And by vision, I do not refer to the posters that are sticking on the walls. You know, so it needs to be something tangible. And if you want to see whether you're if you want to run a small test, how well the vision of your organization is embedded within the world of the individual contributors, go around and ask the people, okay, what are we doing here? What is our vision? And you will be surprised how many people have, or how many different opinions are there, what the vision of your organization is and what the purpose of your organization is. It's really amazing. So I did this once with one of my clients, and the C-level was totally astonished by the outcome. You know, from their perspective, it was totally clear what the company was all about. And then they looked about 40, 50 different answers. And they were, to the vast majority, completely different from what I expected. And this again triggered a new process within the company, and they put more money and more effort into educating people and making sure that people can actually collaborate, communicate, and that they all have a better understanding, so that everyone at the end is on the same page, which I believe is of critical importance. So those are my top 10 baddest, meanest.
Thank you, Stefan. Awesome. So with that, are we ready to dive into Q&A?
Sure.
There are a lot of questions here. So everyone, whatever we do not get to, I'll be sharing the questions with Stefan after the webinar, and he'll be able to address them in some other format. With that, let's dive in. So here's a question from Mike. Regarding number 10, if you have a full backlog, what do you do with new items that continue to come in? Do you have another backlog that comes before the official backlog?
There are always new items coming in, sure. But it depends a bit on the rate that you have. So if the influx is significantly higher than the work that your team can deliver, you're probably working too much in advance. And also you're allocating too much time and effort to figuring out what you might be doing 6 months down the road. And I would consider this to be tricky because you probably allocate resources on things you will never touch. So typically you will find out that there is some equilibrium between new work coming into the product backlog and work from the product backlog being delivered, turned into increments. This is where you want to be as a team. So keep it steady, because what we like to have is sustainable work for a long period of time. So the imbalances are both not a good idea. So working too much and depleting the product backlog is not a good thing. Then you're not putting too much, and then you're probably not putting too much the necessary time into figuring out what is worth building next. And on the other side, getting too much work into the product backlog at the same time is also a misbalance. You know, I would consider, take it to the team, try to figure out why this is happening. You know, it could be an isolated instance for that. So probably you have a critical issue. For example, there are some regulations that need to be addressed from a legal perspective, and they need to be addressed in a very short period of time. Yes, of course, it will lead to a lot of additional work, and but that's the exception, that is not the rule. But in general, try to balance the inflow and the outflow of the product backlog so that the work itself becomes sustainable.
Awesome. And I think that that answer covered a couple of the other questions that we got in. So that's great. Let's see. So here's a question that came from Ronald regarding number 4. Does that mean that the framework can be adjusted to individual needs?
Number 4, let me. Okay, well, it's the nature of the framework that is adaptable.
Right.
You know, so we have first principles absolutely in Scrum that you should not tamper with, and also definition of done, quality level. You know, this is non-negotiable. You know, we don't do that. You know, self-management of the team. We do not interfere with the self-management of the team. Absolutely not. However, next to these first principles, there are so many intentional gaps within the framework that you actually need to come up with some ideas how to fill them, which is totally fine. You know, just don't be dogmatic about it. You know, be flexible. You know, so be more like bamboo in the wind. You know, figure out what is working for you and your environment. And sometimes those will be different from solutions other teams may find. So, and there are moments when you could do more, and it's not helpful to do more because the organization is not at the level, has not reached the level of understanding of agility that it actually can deal with that. So one example where one of my teams was building a new website. We were really good at this. We already had a continuous delivery system built into that, so we could basically deploy at any given moment in time. And the English colleagues we built the application for were confused because we said, no, you can't deliver every second. Yes, of course, click, see, new version online. You know, no, you can't do this. Turned out that the governance guys wanted to have some times in advance to check the website, whether the website was correct and meeting the regulatory standards. And we thought, okay, that won't be necessary because you're part of the team that is creating the definition of done. And if you say this is okay, then it should be okay. But we couldn't convince them. So we came up to we agreed on, okay, they will be given a week's notice, and after that we could deliver by pressing a button. So was this a waste of time? It was, of course, not satisfactory at the moment because we basically were really working well. And we were so proud of our continuous delivery pipeline that we had that we couldn't take the crowbar to the problem because other parts of the organization that were crucial to actually make the whole thing work were not ready. And so in this case, dogmatism, the team decides when to deliver something, does not work.
Awesome. Thank you for those insights. This next question, what are some practical ways to avoid the product owner by proxy anti-pattern? What are some ways to encourage a steering committee to order products and not product backlogs?
That is the $100 question, I'm afraid. Well, I do believe that creating trust among stakeholders is critical for every Scrum team in the long run. So if they believe that you do your best work and that they can entrust their professional career to you, you can achieve a lot. However, you need to get there. And to get there, you actually have to deliver first, and maybe you have to swallow this at the beginning. Yes, of course, Scrum Guide says the product owner decides how to maximize the value of the work of the Scrum team, and they do so by managing the product backlog, but sometimes it's not so easy. What if your organization has a history of considering the IT folks as the internal agency to deliver the features the business units actually need to meet their targets, right? So if you're still in this more kind of project mode oriented organization and not yet at the point where you start flipping over to a product-minded organization, this may take months or years to actually get there. Now, if you just say, no, Scrum says product owner has to do this, blah, 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 you're probably not getting anywhere. The question is, how much can you compromise on this point without sacrificing something else? So my approach has always been to reach out to them as early as possible by reaching out in the sense of educating them and showing how things work, take a lot of time, go the extra mile. I can still remember when I was creating reports for the management because they were so fixated on these reports, and we couldn't find a way to get them away from these reports at the beginning. It took really time. Or there another situation where we started bribing stakeholders, bribing them in the sense of, hey, if you attend our sprint reviews, we give you little jobs that are transported to the express line. Let me put it this way, So just for making sure that we appreciate your presence at the sprint review. All of this is trust building. And the moment they understand that your team is working in their best interests, they will relax. You will get a longer leash. And that might be helpful. How long that is going to take, I can't say. Depends on the situation and the context, on the organization. What is the market you're operating in? What's the culture in your organization? So many different factors. I know it sounds like a Laurie answer, but there is no better one.
That makes sense. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of differences in company cultures and things like that that would influence these things. Thank you. This next one, so this is reflecting back on number 6. In my experience, not all developers feel comfortable by doing more and more work that they're not hired for. And in parentheses, they have developing and coding. I do understand the fallacy, but getting every developer on board seems impossible. How do you coach those developers?
In my experience, it's unlikely that every one of the developers will simply embrace this idea and say, yes, custom interviews, I would like to do those. No, it won't happen. And it's not helpful to start pushing them in that direction. Some people are really introverted, and it's causing them tremendous pain to actually do that. So how can you push them in that situation to do this kind of work? Of course, it's more a question of asking them to do that and helping them to do that, getting more comfortable, slowly but steadily figuring out, okay, in what way they might contribute. So maybe they feel more comfortable in doing some work in customer support, or maybe they help customer care agents to become better at what they do. My learning is, you can't force people to do that, and you shouldn't. And secondly, there are a lot of significantly more ways of being helpful in that matter than directly talking to someone. You just need to figure out how a certain individual can contribute to this overarching idea. And sometimes you have just to say, okay, Malcolm is great at coding, but he's not good at doing anything beyond that. So why not decide as a team that Malcolm is focusing on coding, right? And other people will chip in for Malcolm as far as the customer side is concerned. Totally fine. Take it to the team. Team is self-managing.
Awesome. Thank you. This next question, and I saw another question in here, but now I can't find it. I don't know if it was deleted, but I'll ask it because it's related to this one. So there's some confusion between Hippoism and Taylorism. And I also saw another question asking the difference between Hippoism and micromanagement.
There shouldn't, Hippoism and micromanagement has an overlap, although I believe it's not identical. So Hippoism, from my perspective, is someone is pulling rank, in the sense that, yeah, you might have figured out X, but I believe that Y is more important, and that's why you do Y, because I tell you to do Y. Or even worse, if there's an understanding within the team that they're actually no longer trying to do X because they already know that their boss wants Y, and they know it's useless to oppose that, and that's why they give in and do Y anyway. So that certainly is an issue. Micromanagement, you don't have to be a micromanager to impose your will on other people. Micromanagement actually means telling other people what to do, when and how, in a very detailed fashion, to make sure that other people are replicating your way of doing things, so that you feel more safe, that you can trust them more, that they will do the right thing from your perspective. So lots of checks and balances. So, okay, is this done correctly? Or shouldn't it be done differently? While Hippoism is more this classical pulling rank. So the sister of my cousin believes that the color of the button should be different. Because it doesn't seem to fit our CI. So please change the color of the button.
Okay. Thank you. This next question, so this one goes back to number 3. So Steve says, agreed that it's good to admit failure, but this does take courage, which people lack, so coaching is needed. During which Scrum event is it best to encourage people to open up and discuss failure? The sprint review or the sprint retrospective, or both, really? If you think about it, what advice do you have here to help people open up and kind of enable courage?
So first of all, talking about failure is not the initiation of the blame game, right? So talking about failure is, okay, what can we learn from this to avoid this in the future? I think it's critical to understand that while failure is acceptable, repeating the same mistake twice is not. So you have there's a certain level of tolerance, but it's not indefinitely. So that from the beginning. So retrospectives are, as far as they are team internal event, or even if you have a meta retrospective with stakeholders, are a good way to actually communicate failure. But also the sprint review is quite well posed for that, because at the sprint review, we're also, as a team, supposed to brief the stakeholders about the state of the overall project. What has been, not just what has been achieved, but also how are we making progress? Has something changed? Have we figured out that previous decisions have been less effective than we originally expected, for example? And so that would, from my perspective, be a good idea to actually start doing that. So if you pick the wrong tool for a certain purpose, I think that the sprint review would be a good place to actually talk about this and say, okay, we picked X and that was a mistake. We now believe that Y would be significantly better. Again, transparency. Transparency creates trust, because you already picked X. It was already a mistake. It will surface sooner or later anyway. So be proactive about it and just go ahead with it. And of course, there's the overarching issue of psychological safety. So just read a new report on Harvard Business Review that up to 85% of people in organizations do not feel safe to actually voice their opinion because they fear the repercussions. This, of course, is a nightmarish figure, because as an organization, you want them to share as many of these issues as possible because you already paid for it, right? And you actually want to try and avoid repeating that. It doesn't have to be that way, that everyone reinvents the wheel over and over again, but we already know that this is not working or how it's working correctly. But also, it's a continuous process. You can't switch it on. So the only switch on moment in failure culture is if your CEO steps in front of you and starts sharing failures from the past. So how did I screw up in the past? Just to make sure everyone understands that the CEO is not free of failure. So, for example, just one more issue here. If you go to the websites of venture capital firms, you very often have an anti-portfolio. So where they share investment opportunities that they passed, which nowadays seems ludicrous. So there are people that passed on Facebook or Google.
Okay. Thank you. Next question here comes from Daniel. I still have some difficulty understanding where to draw the line between do what is best for your team and this is not Scrum anymore. Can you elaborate on that?
Okay. first of all, I do not believe that we're getting paid for practicing Scrum. We're all getting paid to solve the problems of our customers, make their life easier within the constraints of our organization, while returning a return on investment. So that said, in the first place, yes, of course, I do believe in the validity of Scrum and in the usefulness of Scrum. I've seen Scrum work really, really well in the appropriate environment. And certainly there are moments when we have an organization where Scrum, the pure Scrum as intended, is unlikely to succeed. The question still is, okay, can we pick part of that and still improve the way we work, improve the value creation, make everyone better, and having a more pleasant way of working with each other? That's totally fine. So I'm always a bit skeptical about people who say, yeah, this is not Scrum. Okay, so it's not Scrum, but if it works for you, it probably is okay. Can you improve on that level? Surely you can. Depends on how the rest of the organization is tagging along with you. Because one thing I learned in the past is it's very hard for a dedicated individual Scrum team to change a whole organization. Well, typically this won't happen. It's more like whack the dog, you know. It requires more to actually become an ecosystem that is really supportive of Scrum than just a decision to say, okay, all project managers and all Scrum masters.
Awesome, thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions before we wrap up. Like I said earlier, I'll definitely pass all these questions along to you, Stefan, to address later. Lots have come in. Do you consider a hardening sprint and end-to-end testing as the same thing? Or do you think there's a place for end-to-end testing in development delivery paradigm?
I think hardening sprint is really, it's a moment of mistrust. You know, this idea of, no, you can't trust these folks to deliver things that are qualitatively at the level that we need them to be to deliver them to our customers. So we want to make sure and add some extra time by just going through the whole stuff again and see whether it's working. So that's the original idea of a hardening sprint. Right? So it's a form of risk mitigation, if you want to call it that way. The idea is that we shouldn't have this need for risk mitigation at a quality level in Scrum teams at all, because in Scrum teams we're all responsible for quality. You know, we all should be able to figure out what is working, what isn't working, and we all should have an interest in actually solving these issues that we're facing. I believe that's at least my take. So there's a reason why we have no sub roles within Scrum teams like tester or something like that. Of course, it's a challenge if your QA department is not, or is constituted outside of the teams themselves. You know, but again, this is a organizational dysfunctionality, I believe, and not necessarily a question where and when to take care of quality. So my ideal world, the Scrum team itself autonomously takes care of quality. Everyone is a tester all the time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. There's another Hippo question here that I want to ask. So regarding Hippoism, what can you recommend to minimize an impact on the team in the case of that Hippo person is the most experienced and actually is a key person?
Yeah, that is the most tricky one. Because, yeah, it's how to gain autonomy from the big individual, right, who did it all in the past and knows everything. It's very, very hard. If that individual is not contributing to this process in the sense of letting go, saying, guys, I know how to do this better than you are, but you have to figure it out on your own, grow up. This is probably unlikely to happen. The problem, of course, here is that I've been in that situation before too, that our hippo is mostly right. That individual has what it takes. So question then is why would you kick the hippo out of your team if it's a facto member? Or can you do something else to actually make it more useful for the team? Help the team with embracing the contribution of the hippo. Okay, number 5, Hippoism is coining this idea negatively, but there might be a form of positive Hippoism, So, but it's the rare exception in my experience.
Okay, great.
We get another one. We have 3 minutes left.
Yeah, we have like 3 minutes left. Let's see. There's a quick question here about outcomes. So someone had suggested you had mentioned outcome. I assume you meant the final product, since you referenced EBM and output is for the increment of each sprint from that guide. So it sounds like they're a little confused about outcomes and outputs.
So we have the increment. Output is actually not our focus in this context. So personally, I never care about how many product backlog items get finished during the sprint. All I care about is that the sprint goal is achieved as a Scrum Master or as a product owner. That's the name of the game. So output is really secondary at best. It's a form of accounting that is really not that important. However, regarding our outcome, what we can say is that we are able to improve our way of picking desirable outcomes by using more metrics over time. So it's amazing, particularly in a software environment, it's amazing to see what you can measure. And at the same time, it's interesting to see how few people are actually still using the metrics available to guide their ideas where to go and what to do next. And hence my reference to the EVM guide. Because probably you're not aware what else you can actually use to guide your decision process. And I think the EVM guide is a good starting point.
Yeah, and I did drop into the chat, everyone, the links to our EBM resource page and also the EBM guide. So definitely check those out. Be some good, helpful nuggets in there. Okay, so we are just about at time. So I think it is time to close out. So Stefan, can you go to the closing slides, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so we always encourage you to continue your learning. And so please visit our website and check out the free learning paths that we have. We have one for product owner, developers, Scrum Master, and leadership. So please check those out. Lots of great resources on there. Webinars like this one, short videos, white papers, case studies, things of that nature. So please check those out. And next slide. And please stay connected with us on our social media channels. Please be sure to be connected with Stefan on LinkedIn and social media. And Stefan's always putting out great content on the Scrum.org blog too. So please stay in tune with our blog. And we're grateful that you joined us today, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, Stefan, for joining us. This has been a great session, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Bye-bye.
Scrum on. Take care.